My name is Robert Miller. I am 73 years old, and every morning I still wake up to my alarm clock at 6:10, as if time had stopped 30 years ago. I am a teacher, a grandfather, a man who was once needed. Today I am going to school again, along the same path where my children once ran, holding my hands. Now I walk alone, slowly, carefully, with a cane that I hide behind the classroom door so that the students don't see it. No one greets me in the school hallway, not because they don't know me, but because they don't think it's necessary. I hear someone whispering behind my back. Is he still working here? I have 2 children, Michael and Sarah. They are alive, healthy, successful. That's why they never have time for me. Their phone calls have become short, their conversations formal. My grandchildren know me more as a photo in a frame than as a person. My heart is not working as well as it used to, but the doctor says, it's normal for your age. I hate that phrase, for your age. That morning, when I arrived at school, I found an unmarked envelope in my mailbox. Inside was a sheet of paper folded in half. Just one sentence, written in block letters. You are no longer needed here. I held that paper in my hands for a long time, not because I was offended, because I was afraid. Because for the first time in my life, I thought, what if it's true? I have lived my life for others, for children, for students, for the system, and now I'm sitting in an empty classroom and I don't know if I still have a place in this world. And then I remembered a promise I made to myself many years ago, promise I had long kept silent about. That's where it all started. When I was young, I wasn't just called Robert, I was called Mr. Miller. And there was something more to it than just a title. It was trust. I remember my first class. Wooden desks, the smell of chalk, and the eyes of children whose curiosity had not yet been killed. I believed then that if you teach a child to think, they will never become cruel. I worked a lot, too much. Linda often fell asleep alone, and I would come home after midnight with graded notebooks and an empty coffee cup. But I knew what I was doing it for. Michael once said at school, my dad teaches history because he remembers everything. I laughed then, not knowing that one day memory would be the only place where I was still needed. We weren't rich, but we were together. I taught my children simple things, to look people in the eye, to listen, to respect those weaker than themselves. I told them, you can't break a child with fear. You have to raise them by example. I took them by the hand when they fell. I was there for them. At least that's how it seemed to me. I was respected at school. My colleagues asked me for advice. Students came back years later and thanked me. I saw the fruits of my labor, not in money, but in people. Back then, I was sure that if I gave my life to others, my old age would be warm. But time doesn't ask for permission. When Linda passed away, the house became too big and too quiet. Michael moved out. Sarah called with reminders about her medication. I still held on to my work because without it, I didn't know who I was. Sometimes I catch myself thinking, maybe I raised good people. But bad children? Because they know how to achieve, but they don't know how to listen. They know how to talk, but they don't know how to hear. At that time, I didn't know that there would be a moment ahead that would force me to look at my whole life without illusions. A moment after which I would no longer be able to remain silent. The first blow is always quiet. You hardly notice it. Comes not in the form of a scream, but in the form of indifference. One day I fell in a supermarket. My leg buckled, and the bag of groceries spilled onto the floor. I lay there and looked at the ceiling with its neon lights, waiting for at least one glance. People walked around me as if I were part of the interior. Someone whispered, old people always fall. A woman stepped over my hand. A stranger helped me up. Without a word, he just gave me his hand and left. I never remembered his face, but I remembered the feeling shame, not for falling, for what I had become in the eyes of others. Things got even worse at school. A young history teacher once said in my presence, no one is interested in these old methods anymore. And a student from the back row shouted, why do we need this old man? The class laughed. I stood at the blackboard with chalk in my hand and didn't know what hurt more, my heart or my throat. At home, I called Michael. He answered on the third ring. "Dad, I can't talk right now. I have a meeting." "I just wanted to hear your voice," I said. "Let's talk another time." And the connection was lost. Sarah advised me to take things less to heart. My grandson Ethan said impatiently, "Grandpa, you're out of touch." He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at his phone. At the hospital, they kept me in the hallway for 4 hours. The nurse said, "Be patient, we have more serious cases." I nodded silently, because old age always means be patient. That evening, I took an old envelope out of the drawer. The same one. "You are no longer needed here." And for the first time, I didn't think about how to survive. I thought about whether I had the right to leave. At that very moment, something happened in my life that turned everything upside down. Came suddenly, painfully, and it forced me to make a choice that I had been running away from my whole life. After the hospital, I didn't go back to school. Not right away. I wrote a request for leave for the first time in 30 years. The principal was surprised, but didn't object. Maybe he had been waiting for this step for a long time. For the first time, I didn't feel ashamed. Only tiredness and a strange sense of relief. I took out the notebook Henry had given me. I ruined the first page. I tore out the second. On the third, I wrote, "How to raise a child properly. Don't break them. See them." I wrote slowly. About mistakes. About silence instead of conversation. About hugs that were missing. I wrote not as a teacher, but as a father who realized too late. The main rule I came up with was simple. A child doesn't need a perfect adult. They need an honest one. Someone who admits their weaknesses, asks for forgiveness, and listens more than they talk. I called Sarah, not to reproach her. Without reproach. "I want to hear you," I said. She was silent longer than usual. Then she cried. We talked for 2 hours. I wrote Michael a letter. A real one. On paper. I didn't ask for anything. I thanked him. And apologized. A week later he came. Without warning. We sat in the kitchen and were silent. And it was better than any words. I started reading to children in the library. No grades. No programs. Just stories. And for the first time in a long time, I saw eyes that weren't looking through me, but at me. I no longer tried to be needed by everyone. I tried to be real for at least someone. And then I realized old age is not the end. It's the last chance to tell the truth. Today, I'm holding that same piece of paper in my hands again. You're not needed here anymore. Now I know who wrote it. It wasn't a student. And it wasn't a colleague. It was me, back then, when I let others decide my worth. I didn't return to school as a teacher. I returned as a person. Sometimes I'm invited to parent-teacher conferences, sometimes just to sit with the kids and talk. No status. No nameplate on the door. And that turned out to be enough. I'm getting older. I walk slower. I get tired more often. But I no longer hide my cane. Because dignity is not in strength, but in accepting yourself. Michael now calls every Sunday. Sarah comes with her grandchildren. Ethan once said, "Grandpa, can I sit next to you?" And that was more than any reward. I understood the main thing about raising a child. Don't demand respect, show it. Don't raise them with fear, raise them with your presence. Don't sacrifice time with your child for the sake of the future, because the future is them. The intrigue of my life ended simply. I was not forgotten. I was heard when I dared to speak honestly. If you are younger and reading this, stop. Call your parents. Look into your child's eyes, before it's too late. And if you are older, know this. You are not a burden. You are a memory. And as long as you remember and love, you are needed.